Tears of Joy. That's the theme for today's resin pendant designs for the teardrop shape, adapted to suit the bezel finish. In the world of open bezels, the teardrop is a true classic. This graceful, natural shape perfectly captures a single drop of water caught in that perfect moment before it falls. I prefer to think of it as a resin drop captured in time. So, join me as we create 5 uplifting teardrop pendants and a bonus freeform no-bezel design using epoxy resin, clear and colored UV resin, pigment powders, alcohol inks, dried flowers, caviar beads, and other crafting materials. Lots to do, let's get started. I kickstarted the design process by tracing each bezel so that I could work to scale. After outlining the teardrops and making a note of the different finishes, I came up with joyous themes complementing these bezel colors. Then, I added the design skeleton before finalizing the color palette and materials. The golden bezel has a sunny theme captured by this dried flower. My minimalist copper bezel will use matching caviar beads in clear resin. The black bezel to shaker transformation will use some black UV resin, this plastic sheet, colorful caviar beads, and some baby oil for slow motion calm bubble action. Bronze bezel will try to capture the magic of the northern lights with some glow in the dark powder, black acrylic paint, and blue-green alcohol inks. Our mermaid tail inspired no-bezel pendant will use this fabulous chameleon crafting glitter. I will use this teardrop outline as a template after layering it with plastic to work on. Now, some floral waves for our silver bezel, using these hydrangea petals and some pearlescent mica powder. My designs are done and materials gathered. Now, let's quickly prepare the base for my bezels. First, I chop up some masking tape to secure the bezel to its base. This classic teardrop-shaped bezel has a quirk. The hoop is perpendicular to the bezel plane, so the bezel won't sit completely flush on the base. The trick is to slide it so the hoop sticks out over the edge. Now for the heat-resistant backing tape. The same guidelines apply to the tape, which should be placed on the base to support the bezel, just below where the hoop begins to curve away. We continue the same process for all the bezels. I prefer this setup because it is easier to move my tiny projects around with gloved hands. The sturdy base prevents the uncured resin from buckling the heat tape and creating accidental leakage of uncured resin. A quick alcohol wipe to clean the surface and our teardrop template is ready. Here is an overview of the crafting tools I'll be using today. Time to mix our epoxy resin. After measuring equal volumes, we mix the resin slowly till it runs clear. We will let it sit for a while so that it can degas before we start using it. With this, our material prep is done. Let the crafting begin. The golden bezel is smaller than the flower, so it will need some trimming. I'm thinking of making the composition a little asymmetrical to highlight the beauty of the petals while still including the flower center. While cutting the flower, it feels like too much is being removed, but my final vision should still capture the essence of the whole. The trimming is done, so let's start by preparing the base. The first step is to coat the flower with resin to eliminate the chance of any bubbles. I have made a small mistake. I should have spread the resin on the base first, which I usually do. Now my hand is trapped because I can't let go. This is a unique challenge specific to me. You can avoid it by simply spreading the resin on the base first before working on the flower. It's fitting well. The asymmetry makes for an interesting composition, creating the illusion of movement inside the bezel. Now, we cover it with another layer of resin. What I'm going to do now is add the excess petals and layer this flower to give it a little more depth. Now we seal the layer. I'm going to keep adding some of these petals to give a more three-dimensional effect. Let's look at the other side. As expected with UV resin, it didn't fully cure throughout the flower. But that works perfectly for us because I'm going to use this. I want to continue the layering on the back of the flower as well. This is the front. There's a little bit of shadow play. This is the back. Right now it looks a little choppy, but I believe once I finish this off and the resin doming is done, it will even out nicely. I'm using epoxy resin for this doming layer. Lately, even though it takes more time, I prefer epoxy when I'm not in a hurry simply because I feel I get to control the dome better. The shrinkage is much less compared to UV resin, so I'm able to visualize the end result more accurately. I'm also able to avoid issues like warping while curing. There are still some air pockets, so I'm going to try and get them out with the help of this wire. Now we let this cure for 24 hours. Look at the dome. It is looking fantastic. Let's finish the front now. Again, I'm going to fill it with epoxy. The process is pretty straightforward. I should have secured this pendant before starting work. I got carried away. The design is very simple but also very pretty. I think the golden color is working really nicely with the dried daisy inside. A little heat gun to dissipate any bubbles. We'll come back after it's cured. The back is absolutely fantastic and the front is flat and glass-like. It's looking awesome. I like the curvy domed surface and how it slightly magnifies what is within. So, a final UV coat to finish off the pendant. My pendant is all sunny and looking gorgeous. It's ready to be assembled. This pendant is a little sci-fi inspired and futuristic in design. The process is simple. I'm going to embed these caviar beads in the resin. The resin is now a little viscous, so the beads won't move around. The design has cured, so let's get this tape off. I love the little ripples around the coppery orb suspended in the resin. I'm going to leave this surface as it is, a little tactile and concave. I could dome it, But then the resin ripples, which add to the visual texture, would even out and the design would become static. This side is flat, so I will dome it and finish it. The epoxy resin I'm using for doming has been sitting for a while, and it's perfect because the chance of it spilling over when I apply a heat gun to remove the bubbles is very low. Our coppery pendant is looking splendid and is ready for final assembly. How do you put joy into a tear? The answer is by making it into a tiny bubble shaker. First, let's create the base layer. I'm going to apply a little black UV resin along the edges. I'm using clear resin here to push the black resin to the sides. The idea is to create a soft tint along the edges to blend with the black bezel. The base layer is cured. Time to pour in the fun. These caviar beads look happy to be here. Now let's seal the beads using this transparent plastic teardrop which I carved out earlier to match the bezel. This part is tricky. With most shakers, the edge is a little thicker with more surface area for the adhesive to act on. But here the edge is not only metallic but also very thin. The resin doesn't really bond well with the bezel surface and can be pried off with a little pressure. I also have to be careful not to spill resin into the bezel, which would cause the beads to clump together. Now we need to fill this shaker with oil. I have a syringe ready, but the opening is too small, so it needs to be widened. Now let's close the opening with some UV resin. I have domed the size, but I don't feel it's enough. The edges are still the weakest point in this link. So just for peace of mind, I'm going to dip dome this entire thing. The bezel shaker is a success. The doming was a little uneven, but my eye can only see the bubble. My teardrop pendant is ready to be assembled into a cute back charm. This bronze bezel with its rich earthy toned and elegant shape called out for a touch of nature. A moment of inspiration hit and I chose blue and green colors to craft a northern light scenery, bringing a slice of the night sky into this tiny world. The first step is to tint the base layer with a little green for the sky and a little blue for the ground. This will be our background layer. Now, I'm going to add some glow-in-the-dark streaks to mimic the northern lights. In its non-glowing state, this resin and pigment mix looks a lot like wispy clouds. You can see the raised profile now, but it will disappear after the doming process. Next, let's add the rocky silhouette with some black acrylic paint. I'm going to clean up the bezel's edge and also remove some paint from the middle of the hills. This will make it look like there's water reflecting the sky. Sorry about the lighting conditions. Let's dry the paint before sealing it with UV resin. Now for a final top coat of UV resin. Let's add a little glow to the back, which can just be a mystical sky. Now we'll seal this surface. There's a little air bubble here. I'll file it down before applying the final coat of UV resin. Look at that silhouette and that lake, the swirling colors in the night sky. I love it. My pendant is magic and is ready for final assembly. It is time to create our free-form no-bezel pendant. The technique for this pendant is pretty straightforward and simple. I lay a layer of UV resin within the teardrop template's boundary to create a base to build on. Now, let's add some glitter. I'll push it down a little to create a gradient from clear to dense. We'll seal this glitter with another coat of UV resin. Now our skeleton is ready. Let's add the hoop. With the hoop now in place, we'll keep adding layers till we reach the desired thickness for the pendant. I'm not going to make it too bulky, so the focus remains on the glitter and the teardrop outline. My pendant is glittery and ready for final assembly. Our silvery bezel has a watery, flowery theme, so we are going to use these dried flower petals to create a sort of floral wave inside. The flower itself is too large to fit, so I need to separate the petals and get a bunch of them ready before we start. The petals are ready. Let's pour our base layer. Now, let's start putting in the petals. I am using epoxy resin because I need the resin to cure evenly around the petals. As you saw when we worked on the golden bezel, there was a lot of uncured resin in the shadow areas. However, since the flower was flat, it did not matter because we simply cured it from the other side. But in this case, there might be shadow areas between the petals. I have poured to the brim and I'm a little worried that once the epoxy starts to settle, it might overflow. So I'm going to put a little tape here to prevent that from happening and to keep the first petal from floating out. The petals are light and won't sink on their own, but if I hold the first petal down, the rest will stay in place. It has cured and it is looking so pretty. It looks like the Sydney Opera House from the side. Very, very nice. The white petals were a perfect choice. I was originally thinking of going with bluish petals. I am so glad I didn't. Let's add another layer of resin. This time I'm going to add a little resin to the petals as well. I don't want to completely embed them because I want them to stick out. This will create visual movement in the design and capture the quiet exuberance of these curly petals. You can also see the veins of the petals now that they are in contact with resin. Now, I'm going to fill up the gaps and create a smooth finish. I'll just slightly brush the entire surface so that when the resin coat cures, the petals will be stronger. I want the place where the resin meets the bezel edge to be as even as possible, even with the petals hanging out. This is really starting to come together and it is looking very pretty. It is such a subtle and airy design. These petals almost have a frothy, wave-like energy. My resin has cured, so let's take a look. I don't want this to be a reversible pendant, but look at that back. It looks amazing, the shadows and everything. I'm just going to add a layer of dome here and sprinkle it with a little pearlescent shimmer. It will be in the shadow of the petals, just to give a background so that the light doesn't pass through. This will also help to reflect the petals and make them more visible from the front. I'm going to be using UV resin for this because I don't want the pigments to go all the way to the edge. I'll just sprinkle it towards the bottom as I don't want it to show a lot from the top either. The resin has cured and look at that. The wavy swirly effect is being continued in the pigment as well. It is very subtle and only visible at a certain angle. It disappears and becomes one with the rest of the background most of the time. Now we are going to seal this with one final coat of resin. Let me know in the comments what you think of this way of working with flower petals in a bezel. This pendant is ready for final assembly. We started with an empty bezel, and then we filled it up with imagination using simple crafting materials and resin to create simple compositions or combination of materials to challenge the constraints of shape. We even made a freeform teardrop pendant. This futuristic tactile design was the easiest to make and really shows off the quality of resin as a transparent medium that can adapt to any design. The orbs create ripples in the clear resin, a bit like planets and gravity. The matching colors of the caviar beads and the bezel are what truly makes this design easy on the eye. The hole of the bezel is too small for the cord I'm using, so jump rings will help with the transition. I will use this fawn colored cord to complete the piece. Even though the ingredients are common, this dried color pendant has an unconventional look to it. It's like a white ocean and the petals are crashing waves. The back gives off a little chameleon vibe reminiscent of ocean pearls. However, I'm not really happy with the pigment now. I feel that perhaps I should have either applied the pigment evenly or left the dome clear. What do you think? We will add a simple chain to the pendant to complete it. I'm so glad I tried to make a shaker. This is such a happy little teardrop and my first attempt at making a resin shaker. Watching the bubble wander around inside the bezel, pushing the tiny colorful caviar beads is totally relaxing. I could watch the bubble move the beads around all day. It is so gentle and the slow motion is very therapeutic. I will assemble this pendant into a bag charm. This way I will be able to play with it when I'm traveling with my bag on my lap. The swirl of alcohol ink in the sky hovering over the rocky terrain is beautiful. The glow looks enchanting in the dark as well. The doming is perfect and the way the light passes through is very pretty. At a glance, the pendant seems complete. The bronze and the blue-green combination gives it a classy, glassy look, but upon closer study, the scenery becomes visible to the observer. The glow-in-the-dark part of the pendant is like a secret that only the wearer knows about. I'm going to complete this pendant with a black cord and matching accessories. The black will work well with the resin coloring and will offset the bezel color entirely. This combination of the sunny daisy with the gold bezel finish brings out the best in each other, creating a very bright design. The asymmetry adds movement and the layering of petals provides depth. The dome magnifies the flower's center beautifully, which might not have been noticeable if the flower was whole. I will be using this earthy cord, the color the same as a dried wine tendril, to complete the summer flower look. All accessories have the same finish as the bezel. This mermaid tail inspired pendant is glorious and very blingy. It is another wonderful example of the fantastic qualities of crafting with resin. The way it can be molded into any shape and how easy it is to embed crafting materials into it makes it a dream for resin craft lovers. I will make this pendant into a charm. I have the perfect accessory to complete the chameleon look for this mermaid tail inspired teardrop pendant. This was my take on teardrop-shaped open bezel resin pendants, and I hope your brain is buzzing with fresh ideas for your own resin bezel pendant projects. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to check out my other videos dedicated to resin designs for bezels of other shapes. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.